Hey guys, so this is the last video for the sequence and it's going to be about setting up your folder structure and Python environment on your PyCharm so that you can run tests. So tests are super useful and I'm really passionate about using them, especially in science because they ensure that we have reproducibility. It's really great if you can start getting into the habit of testing while you're a student, but I guess it doesn't matter whenever you start. Better late than never. So tests, most people write them as they're going because it's so fundamental to ensuring that the code is doing what you want it to do, because sometimes things act in a way that we don't expect, especially if we're using someone else's package or if we're using a function that has some stochasticity in it. You want to know that what you're getting is what you expect. So I would always recommend saving your tests in a test file, which is generally the way that you do it if you're actually writing production code. So it also allows you to identify if things have changed and always make sure that the work you're doing is essentially correct. So if we go back to our video example that we made in the previous couple of videos, what we want to do is we want to create a couple of folders. So we want to change up the structure a bit so it doesn't get too messy. So let's go down to our the bottom of here and we can see that there's a little terminal. So we'll click on that. We're just going to make a couple of folders. So we'll just make one called project code, so make directory mkdir, and we're also going to mkdir a folder called tests, which is just the convention. So now if I reopen this up, I've got project code and tests. We're going to move our python example.py file to project code. And what we're going to do is we're going to add a new file to our tests file, and we're going to call it project tests.py. You can't actually just call this test, otherwise the unit test won't be able to find it. Just a little FYI. So also PyCharm also asks you if you want to automatically add files. I don't because I like to do it via terminal, but you can add it. It's up to you. But it basically recognizes that you've got a Git project here. And as you can see, it's red, which means it's not being tracked. Okay, cool. So we've now got some code and we've got an empty test file. So let's add a function that we can actually test in here. So def add numbers. What we're gonna do is just add two numbers together, the most simple example, and num2. See in Python 3 how I can do type hinting? It's really useful so that you can not only tell people what you want to do, but you can also give people an indication that this is going to be two integers that you're adding together. The first thing I'm going to do is add a comment to my function so that I know what it does. Adds two numbers together. I'm going to print what the two numbers are. You added. This is just a nice way of being able to type numbers into strings, so would recommend using it. So you type F at the start, then just a single string quotation, and then basically the number in the curly brackets. It's really nice. You can also execute commands in it like num1 plus num2, but we're also going to return these values. So let's just check that add numbers works. So what we're going to print out, print add numbers 1, 2, and let's get rid of this one and try running that. You added 1, 2. Actually, let's make this a little bit more readable. Run in 2, and you got 3. So very easy. But see, this is what we'd exactly do. We'd test this, and then some people just don't save that test anywhere. So I'm going to say we should save this. What we can do is we can write a test in our project tests file. So the first thing that we want to do is import the unit test library from Python. So it's this one, unit test, and I think it's by default installed. Now we also want to run import the code that we wrote in Python example, because we can't just by default use it. So for example, if we wanted to use it, we couldn't just write, what did I call the thing? Add numbers. We can't just write add numbers, it won't know where it is. So what we want to do is from Python example, import star. Now just keep in mind, if this isn't coming up and it can't find it, what you might need to do is change your preferences, as I showed you in the previous video, to set project code to be a source. So if, for example, that wasn't a source, it wouldn't come up as finding this. So what we're going to go is preferences and make sure that our project code is set as a source on this side, and our tests are also set as a source. Just kind of easier way of doing things. Now that goes away. Now what we could do is actually check this add numbers is actually correct. Add numbers 1, 2. Now what we can also do is we can change this configuration here, or we can actually run it as a test. So what we're going to do is we're going to import from the test class. So this is just general convention. So you make a class that uses all the basically information from the unit test case. So it extends the test case class that has already been made in this unit test package. You don't really need to know about this, but it's just useful things to be able to know. So by importing this, we by default get this run test function. So that's why it's really nice to do. We also get some useful things such as asserting. The first thing we're going to do though is just check that we can run this, so 1 and 2. Let's run that now and check that this works. So it says we ran one test in 0.1 seconds and it printed out the same things that we expected. What we might want to do is that we can do this assert statement, and we can assert that that returns us 3, which is what we know is the case. And it worked. So it says that this test passed, you added 1 and 2, and it ran. So if we instead asserted that it was something incorrect, let's see how that works. And it says that the test failed. 1 plus 1, or 1 and 2 equals 3, and we tried to assert that it equals 4, and now we've got this assertion error. So assert is just the default, but there's tons of other things that you can do to run these statements, but I'll just show you this one for now. You can do more research in your own time. You could add other things, so assert -1 and 2 is actually only 1, etc. So you can run all sorts of things together. You could also run a second one, so def test negative add. So something to keep in mind, see how I'm prefixing these all with test? That's what you need to do to tell this test class to run these things. So we could run both of these at the same time, and now it's going to say that I ran 2 tests and both passed. So the little tick tells us it passed. Say though I'm going to do something more complicated. Also you can command click and it'll take you straight to the code. Let's say the value equals num1 plus num2. And let's pretend that I wasn't sure why things were wrong. So run this now, check that it's exactly the same. Awesome. But say I wanted to dive into this, I can set a breakpoint here. So just by clicking that with my left click, I've set a breakpoint. What that means is that if I'm running project tests, I can click this, and instead of going run like before, I can click debug. What's going to happen then is rather than running through everything, it's actually going to stop. And this is so useful for trying to work out what's going wrong. For example, I can now see that what num1 and num2 are, they're down in my variables column. So this is your console, and then your debugger tells you what your variables are. I can see that they're both integers, that's 1 and 2. I can also then step over, which is this little function. And now it says my value equals 3. So I know exactly what's going on in my code. So this is super useful so that you don't have to put print statements everywhere. And it might just give you a bit more of an idea of what's going on. So I thought that would be an easy thing, nice thing to show you. The other thing that you can do is then just resume and it'll keep running. Let's pretend we have actually, I think I've probably showed you enough for now. So that's just the base default, or just some basic ways that you can test your code, you can make sure things are running well, and you can ensure that your code is going to be reproducible. So the last things that we want to do is we want to actually add our code from our tests folder. So let's add tests and project tests. Now let's commit all the code that we've changed. So git commit -a. Let's have a quick look. We've got a new file, which is actually just the old file because we moved it. We said we'd deleted that. And we've got a new file, project test.py. So we're gonna say added tests. So :WQ. Now we're gonna push this code to our origin so that we can make sure that in the future we've got stuff all going right. Okay, let's check where our code is. Oh, it's just turned nighttime. I don't know if you've noticed it go darker, but I will change that back from my dark theme. But basically we can see in our video example, we've now got the project code, we've got the tests that we just pushed. 1 minute ago I pushed this, I can click on this and it'll actually show me the things that we added, which was all this different code, which is a really nice way of looking at the things that you've changed. So that concludes, I guess, the last video in this series, which just gives you a basic rundown of things that I find really useful and also stuff that you might need to know for your current projects, but also possibly future projects. So thanks for tuning in, and stay tuned because I might do more throughout the semester.